Hello, let me know if you're here. Hi. Oh, there's some people here. I see. Cool. Hello, everyone. Let me know when you can hear me. I know sometimes it takes a minute before it serves the video to you. Hey, Jules. Good to see you. Hi, Aaron. Hey, Patrick. Audible. Good. Yes. Cool. All right. I think we're officially live then. Loriana, I cannot do anything about that. I was issued this computer and it has terrible audio issues, so sorry about that. I've been complaining about it forever. Hi, Galen. Hey, Quentin. I don't know why I have headphones in. I'm not listening to anybody. I'm just so used to putting headphones in for video chats. It feels weird not having them in. Okay, yeah. So I'm basically just here to answer any questions that you have about like querying or finding a literary agent or that kind of thing. And if anyone needs live captions, unfortunately this software can't do it, but if you're on Chrome, you can use their automated live caption services. So I recommend doing that. Let me get this closer to me so maybe it'll sound better. Hey, Anna. Hi, Andrea. So feel free to drop any questions. Crystal did send me some on Twitter, so I can answer those if we're not yet warmed up to ask questions yet. So just some ground rules. We're going to be going for 30 minutes today. No pitching, no pre-pitching, please. And so pre-pitching is like, would you be interested in XYZ? And of course, anyone who's mean gets blocked, which means you can still watch. You just can't comment. So. All right, I'm going to answer one of Crystal's questions first. Let's see. What do you wish you could change about the querying process? So after today's discussion, I would love if it could be more standardized. I think the problem there is getting the buy-in from all the agents, because like there's no way to mandate that agents, do things a certain way. And so, I mean, like if I had a magic wand, that's what I'd do. But do I realistically think it will happen? Probably not soon. Is there a reliable, legit way to find solid beta readers? No. Short answer. It is kind of just like a nebulous, like confusing process. And also, like, honestly, I think this is a question for writers, which I am a writer, so that's the only reason why I'm able to answer it. But I definitely know agents who wouldn't be able to answer this for you. But some of the ways that I found beta readers is just by participating in writing communities, whether they're online or in person, going to local critique groups, seeing if there's anyone whose critiques you specifically like. So I was part of a critique group when I first moved to Florida, where we would just critique like pieces, small pieces every week. And through that process, I was able to identify like whose critiques I found the most valuable, and then kind of like ask them to read for me. So those are probably some of the best ways. Like if you're in online writing communities, I know it can be kind of like hard to trust people online that you've never seen their face before. But I feel like once you got to know them a little bit, like I probably wouldn't send it to someone who was just like brand new and I've never really interacted with them before. but try to get to know people. Aaron said, are there any months that seems to be the least busy for agents querying, or does it just depend? I know a lot to seem to open up and close around the same time. Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion about this, and it's funny because like some people will tell you that there is one right answer and there is not. And I think I don't know why those people think there is one right answer, because everyone's lives are different, like, right? So like some agents may tell you that they're the least busy in February, right? Which a lot of agents have said that. But then say you have like an agent who, is having a baby or buying a house in February, like that's not going to be the best time for them. So there's not just like an across the board answer that is correct. I think the best time to query agents is when those agents are open to queries, because if they're open to queries, then it's on them to manage their own submissions. If there is like like a lot of people kind of have this like top 5 of like the agents they really, really want, right? So if they're, or most of them or some of them are closed to queries, I probably would wait until they opened, just so you didn't get into a situation where you got an offer from an agent and you're not even able to query some of your top choices because you got offer representation and you haven't been able to query that agent. That's the only caveat. Otherwise, so people say like, don't query in December because agents are busy, blah, 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 right? But then a lot of agents are answering like 2-3 months behind. So they're not even reading your December query into February. So does it really matter that it was sent in December? I don't think so. Others may disagree with me. That's fine. Okay. What qualifies as previously published? Does having an old draft on a website like Wattpad or Tapas count? I don't know what Tapas is, but I know that most agents do not consider most agents do not consider the unpaid portion of Wattpad published. So they have like a paid program, and that's where it gets a little dicey because that might be considered Wattpad. I remember like when I first started learning about the industry in like 2012, people were like much more scared of like posting things online than they are now. And so like people used to say, don't put a paragraph up on your website or that will take your first rights. And that's not really a concern anymore. But the way that we define it at Pitch Wars, which is kind of what I try to use, is if it has ever been offered for sale, if it was ever part of a paid for reads program, so like Wattpad or whatever, or if it's ever had an ISBN that's previously published. Patrick is asking about request rates. Pre-pandemic guide I saw for minimum request rates, as in you no longer need to revise, was 30%. Any idea on what a good one is now? I think I saw a thread about this recently where a lot of people were chiming in with their numbers, and that's probably going to be the best source for you, because honestly on the agent side we don't know what people's request rates are, like, because we can't see that information. I think it might have been MV Pine who was posting, but let me look for that. Is that their name? MV Pine? That sounds, they just tweeted at me. So I'll scroll a little bit and see if I can find it. Sorry for the dead air. Just trying to find. Oh my goodness. A lot of people tweeted at me today. Sorry. I didn't realize. I was just sitting in my car on Twitter, so that's probably why. Okay, I'll find it in a bit, but we'll come back to that. And I'd like to ask about comps. I'm sure you get this all the time. Do they need to be in the last 5 years? What's your take on how old a comp can be? Ideally, last 5 years, something recent, something relative to what people are currently reading now, because the problem with old comps is those books wouldn't sell now. Even like the ones that you think are like really great, like the books that sold like 20-30 years ago, even the books that sold in like 2012, they might not sell right now. So that's the problem with old comps. So in terms of age, if you can find some that are like if you can mix an old one with a new one, that might help a little bit to make the person be able to visualize where it would fit on the shelf. Because that's really what a comp is doing. It's also, I mean, sometimes it can just be a great way to pitch your book very quickly, because sometimes it just works like that. But a lot of times it's to kind of give the person an idea of where you think the book is going to fit on the shelf. It gives us, because remember, like, we're trying to read as many queries a day. So as many pieces of information that we can have that give us an idea of what this book is about is going to be ideal. So there's a second part of this question. What if you truly don't have good comps, better stretch it and throw some in there, even though if they're not really good comps. So a lot of times because sometimes I'll get into like a really deep conversation with an author on their comps. And so a lot of times when they're telling me they don't have any good comps, I think they're looking for the wrong thing. I think what they're looking for is a book that is very similar to theirs, and that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for a book that has maybe a similar voice to yours, a book that evokes similar feelings to yours. So it doesn't even have to be the same genre, as long as you indicate like, hey, this is like of course, every book I've ever read just like went out of my head right now, but like you could be like, oh, this is Little Thieves but in space, so you could even just, if you're, what you're really trying to do is evoke some sort of readers who like this will also like this for any given reason. So it doesn't have to be like a really close like story match or anything like that. Yeah. Oh, more questions about comps. People always have a lot of questions for comps. Can we talk a little bit about comps? Specifically, what do you think is a good strategy to approach them with? Like X meets Y, fans of X would like this. Yeah, any of those work. So I think there's not going to be like a one size fits all solution. And I think any of those are kind of like good things to use. And it depends on your book, of course. So like if your book really, like I remember Mary Mancusi pitching her Scorched series years ago. She said it was a YA Terminator, but with dragons. And like, honestly, you hear that and you know exactly what that book is, right? So, but that was a comp that she used to pitch to readers, not necessarily to industry people. And so you also have to take that into consideration when you see like books, where their publishing team has pitched using a comp that, writers are told not to use that kind of comp in their query letter. That's just because you're reaching a different audience. And so the audience that is the general readership is different from the audience that is, agents and editors who are further along, like, they're several years ahead in their reading and that kind of thing. So I hope that helps. I rambled a little bit. Okay, Galen asks, if you have two books ready to query in the same genre, do you have any advice about how to pick which one to query first? Honestly, it's a really hard question to answer without knowing like several different factors, but so like if you feel like there's one that is maybe hotter to compared to the market, like the market is looking for that a specific element or something, then obviously you'd want to go with that one first. I mean, you can always do, like, I know some people do a kind of a small round of queries. So like in YA, a small round of queries would be like 10, and then see what kind of response you get back. And then you may find that there might be some sort of feedback that you're getting that means you want to revise that book. So what you could do is then query your next book while you're revising that first book. I mean, that may happen. It may not happen. It really is just like, you just got to pick which one you think has the best chance, I think, to start off with. You saw the thread too, Patrick. Okay, you were saying about 5 to 10%. Yeah, I think that's legit. I feel like there are a lot of agents out there, and I think that there are and it also like really heavily depends on your genre as well. Like if you're writing YA fantasy right now, like I'm sorry, it's a hard road for y'all. YA fantasy sells well, like in that it makes a lot of money when the books do sell, but there's so much competition out there. So I'll give you a little sneak peek into my statistics to give you an idea. So I represent middle grade, all genres, young adult, all genres, adult science fiction, fantasy umbrella, and adult romance. And let's see, I received so far, I received 700 queries in January and 70 since February started. And 134 of those were young adult fantasy. Like there's just so much. There's so much YA fantasy. So your response rate may be a little lower if you're writing that or another genre that's like kind of saturated. Erin, yeah, if you could find that thread, that would be great. Yeah, it is the one from 2 weeks or so ago. That's probably going to be probably some of the best sources of information, because honestly, it takes like writers to compile that information. Because like I said, agents have no idea what your request rate looks like. Would you recommend querying with a prologue or without, and just querying with your chapter 1? So I was kind of like prologue neutral before I opened to my own queries. And now after, I don't know, less than a month, I actually, if I see a prologue, I skip it and read chapter 1. And the main reason is because even if it is a good prologue, which many of them are not doing what the writer thinks they're doing, even if it is a good prologue, the main thing I want to do is I want to see the voice and the character that I'm going to spend the most time with. And that's why I jumped to chapter 1, is because I'm trying to decide if I want to spend more time with this character and in this world. And a lot of times the prologue is a different character, is a different time period. So it is up to you. I think it's a personal decision. I think some people hate prologues. I'm not a hater of prologues, but I don't think they do a lot of service to the way that queries are read, if that makes sense. What's more important for comps, how close it is to your book or picking a successful book? Neither. I would say the most important thing for comps is making sure that the readership is the same for those books. So I'm not going to go through it all again because we have questions, but like, yeah. I don't think that comps that are super close to your book do you a lot of good, because if you pick a book that is like very, very, very similar to your book, like has a similar storyline, maybe has a similar world, whatever, then it's kind of like, well, what makes this book stand apart from that book, right? So I don't think you should pick comps that are like really, really similar to your book. Yeah, everyone's request rate was pretty low. Kids aren't really reading the series of unfortunate events anymore. Yeah, that's an old series. What about comping a book that's not out yet? So I saw that actually in a query today, and I don't like it. Mainly because like I probably haven't read it yet if it's in an arc, because I only get audiobook arcs. And they only come out like 2 weeks before the book is out, and then there's no way I'm reading it before the book is out. And also because then no one knows how the book is sold yet. If that makes sense. So if it crashed, like, especially if you're comping a book that's not out yet and it comes out in, let's say, 2 months, and then the agent's 2 months behind on reading the query, and like something bad has happened with that book, like it's found to be like problematic, or it just like didn't sell well at all, or like, the copies fell into the ocean and no one's been able to read it yet. Yeah, it's a gamble. This is kind of a weird one, but is there an industry standard for how long to wait before recurring an agent who rejected a different book? There's not an industry standard. Some people will tell you to wait a couple of months. I think it just depends. Like if you're querying two kind of right after one or the other, I don't think that's a huge issue, but I have heard other agents talking about writers who will just like rapid fire, like every time they reject a book, like a new one will come in and they'll do like 12 in a year, and it's just not a good sign when a writer is like querying 12 books in a year, especially novels, because it's like, I don't know, it just seems like, I don't want to say anything bad because maybe it could be a situation where they're all good, but like it just doesn't seem like maybe the writer's taking enough time on a book. Do you think you or your agency would consider using a ranking algorithm for predicting which queries you are likely to respond to? No. Nope. If you're going into the trenches with a YA fantasy that's in the 50K range, is that word count way too low and it'll turn away most agents? It is quite low, and so this is the way I look at it, and again, like everyone's going to be a little bit different. So when I'm looking at things like word count, I'm looking at a genre match, I'm looking at, I don't know, like different tropes or whatever, right? Nothing, very little. I don't want to say nothing, but very little is like an auto reject, right? But like if you tell me that your YA fantasy novel is 5,000 words, that's going to be auto reject because that's not a novel. If it's something that's like a little bit outlier, like a 50K YA fantasy, it's just like the pages have to be that much better, if that makes sense. It's almost like you get, like in gymnastics or whatever, you get like points for difficulty and points for style. And I don't even know, I haven't watched gymnastics in a long time. And so like if your points for word count are a little bit lower, then your points for like writing style need to be that much higher, if that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. There's like a little thermometer meter, that people use for donations. It's like once we get past a certain point. But it's not an auto reject, but it's definitely like a eyebrow raiser. Yeah, it's a lot of queries. All right, we have 7 more minutes. See if we have any more questions. I can go back to Crystal's questions if I can find them. Okay. How can an author tell if they have been blacklisted? I don't, there's not a blacklist. That's not really a thing. Agents aren't even centralized enough to like have a blacklist. The only person that might be on a industry-wide blacklist is Gary Cadet. And if you have been on writing Twitter at all, you know who he is, and he's very abusive. That is probably the only person that I can think of that is on a blacklist. There are definitely like agents talk behind the scenes, of course, and like when authors get really upset, when they get like mean or they threaten, people talk. So yeah, there's not really a blacklist. Okay. Quentin said 12. I have 2. Yeah. Yes. See? Okay. For R&Rs, is there a sweet spot for resubmission timeline? I've heard some agents get worried if it's resubmitted too quickly, and others say if it took too long. Yeah, I've also heard the ones that say, like, if I give you an R&R, don't submit back to me within 3 months. However, like as a page word mentor, I've seen authors rewrite their whole book, like a complete rewrite in a month, and it come out really good. So I am not going to place that kind of like, I don't recommend doing that. I'm sure it's not good for your mental health to like crash a book like that, but I don't think like, I don't want to put a timeline on it. Others people might say that. The only thing is like, I probably wouldn't wait more than like, I would say 8 months, mainly just because at that point the market has changed a little bit. So something that a concept that an agent might have been excited about 8 months earlier might now be, editors are saying, oh, I have too many of these, don't give these to me. So that's probably the main guideline. Splattered Thoughts asks, my friends often talk about being in an agent's maybe pile if people on Query Tracker reply around them but not to their query. Is this a real thing or just wishful thinking? It depends on the agent and how chaotic they are. I have OCPD, so I compulsively read in reverse date order. The only exception for me is if I have some sort of referral or if I requested in a contest. That one's going to get priority because it's more like a solicited submission. But if it's just general slush pile and you see a lot of people submitted after you have already heard a response, that the agent may be thinking about it for a while. I know I definitely, when I was in Natasha's inbox, that was definitely a thing. So it is a thing. How much would an author need to change to requery the same novel with an agent again? So authors will like, I just saw Mike's comment about Gary. yeah. Everyone knows Gary and no one wants to work with Gary. So, okay. How much would an author need to change to require the same novel with an agent? Again, some agents are going to really differ in their answer. So like Eric Smith is like, go ahead, do it. If someone, the worst you can get is another reject. And that's true too. And I think Eric has like, he has really writer's best interest in heart. And he's always trying to be like, just really understanding. And I think some agents are maybe less so, and they might get annoyed by it. So honestly, I think it depends by the agent, which is not a good answer. And I'm sorry that there's not like a across the board answer for you. If it is a complete rewrite, like you have changed tropes or you have changed settings, or if you've changed, time periods or something huge, then I feel like you're pretty safe to requery. But I think also the problem is, and the reason why it's such a hard question to answer is because every author will interpret this differently too. And so we'll get authors who like changed a couple words and they're like, oh, I completely changed my book. Do you want to see it again? And then you'll get authors who like literally nothing looks the same. Like, I don't even understand why they think it's the same book. And they'll be like, is this enough change? And so everyone interprets it a little bit differently. So I think that's what makes it such a hard question to answer. Patrick. Yeah, so we have about 2 minutes left. See if we have any more questions. I have one more from Crystal. It says, how can an author tell if they have just barely missed the mark? That is whenever you're getting usually personalized feedback on rejections. Usually it means there's something that the agent saw in your writing that they felt was promising, whether it's your storytelling or your actual like sentence construction or your character development or something like that. That's when you can tell you've just kind of, you've come close. Yeah. What's the most important question to ask an agent before accepting representation? The one that I really like, and mainly because like, I think part of it is I work with so many like neurodivergent people who have specific communication needs. So one of the ones that's really important to me is ask, what is your communication style? Because I'll tell you, part of my answer is I'm adjusting to your communication needs as much as I can. And so if an agent is prescribing a communication style, at least, especially if you're a person who needs like specific communication things, that may be a red flag for you. And that's just like my personal opinion. And also like, I am just constantly thinking about my own personal communication needs and how often they are unserved. And so that's why I think that's a big one for me. How would you suggest fixing? Okay, we'll go like 5 extra minutes because I see a couple of more questions. How would you, but no more questions after this. How would you suggest fixing missing the mark when you're getting, sometimes it's really hard, Emma. And I know, like, I understand that like a lot of the answers to these questions is really frustrating because I'm like, it depends. But it really does. And writing and books are just like such a subjective thing, right? And like sometimes the thing that an agent doesn't like is not a universal thing. It's like their own personal taste, right? And so if you're getting multiple agents saying kind of a similar thing, sometimes you can fix that. And sometimes I've seen people fix stuff like that. Sometimes it's something that's going to be really hard to fix. So if you listen to Queries, Qualms, and Quirks, my podcast where authors share like their publishing journeys, the episode with Sarah, oh my goodness, what's her last name? She's a middle grade author. I'm going to search her real quick. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I hope Sarah doesn't see this and she knows I forgot her name. Sarah McGuire. If you listen to the episode of Sarah McGuire, she talks a lot about this, how she spent so long trying to fix one book, and then she just like had a revelation, like based on something her sister said, who's an opera singer. So I just thought it was like great that crossed over, where she was like, I'm trying to fix this really broken thing, and maybe what I need to do is just start a new thing. And that's really hard to hear, especially if you feel really strongly about a book. But sometimes you can be too close to a book. If you're just getting forms, is that a sign to go back to the drawing board? I mean, yeah, I would definitely try to at the very least, get beta reader feedback on it. And here's the other part that's like really hard is like sometimes you have beta readers and they don't want to be mean to you, right? And so like they may tell you things that you can fix, but most beta readers won't tell you something like, and I'm not saying this is you, of course, but beta readers won't tell you something like, this book just bored me to tears. Like I don't care about it. And so try to find beta readers who are gonna like have an honest conversation with you, but without hurting your feelings, of course. I did hear of an author who was trying to get some advice because all of his beta readers, all the people who agreed to beta read for him, just kind of like ghosted him and never got back to him. And that is definitely a sign to go back to the drawing board, because I feel like if all of your beta readers are ghosting you, it's probably to avoid an uncomfortable conversation. That's just my guess. Like, of course, I don't know for sure. If you're just getting forms, it's not necessarily a sign to go back to the drawing board. It may be a sign that what you're writing doesn't have a huge market right now. And so anything that's like, a little bit of struggle in the market is again going to have to be like the best thing that I've ever read. If that makes any sense, or it might need like something unique. Maybe it's a well-written book, but the description like doesn't sound any different from 3 other books that are already published. So maybe it needs some kind of unique twist that's not there, some kind of unique element. It's really hard to say, of course, without reading anything, but yeah. Does that answer your question? All right, cool. So I think, yeah. Thank y'all for tuning in and chatting with me. And I have a lot of Fools to read, so that is what is on my schedule for tonight. So I'm gonna switch screens and switch chairs so it feels different at least, and go read some Fools. So thank you all so much. I don't know how often I'll do these, but I do have on February 18th, I used to have a show called Agent Chat Live, and we decided, one of me and the regulars, we're going to flip the script a little bit. And so Danny, aka Lodestar, if you know him, he's going to interview me for Agent Chat Live. We're going to switch it up. So we will be here on the 18th at 8 p.m. doing that. So there will be an hour long-ish conversation probably. All right, everyone have a good night. Thank you so much. Stay safe. If you are anywhere it's cold, stay warm. Florida does not have that problem today. Everyone have a good evening, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.